bartenders have just announced Christmas will be different this year for thousands of us.
Come on, we're coming! Ready?
Yeah.
Paper boy's working before he goes, lying to the teacher he knows he knows. Didn't I? He should have brought his lines in yesterday. La 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 la. Round down with birds are singing. Round down with the sun shines bright. Round down with the birds sing for you. 'Cause they already know you. They already know you.
There you go, lads.
No thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, you too. Come on then.
Oh, good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it will.
Hello everyone and welcome to our final session. It's number 6 in our online event series, Christmas Made Easy. And this is how to invent your own top-notch cocktail in association with the Co-op. In this 45-minute masterclass, we'll be showing you the best cocktail making techniques and taking you through the essential ingredients used by the UK's best mixologists. By the end of this session, we hope you will go away feeling like a real Christmas cocktail connoisseur. Joining me this evening is Joe Schofield. What a star to have with us. Very, very pleased to have him here. So just a few things about his very, very busy life. In July 2018, Joe was awarded one of the most prestigious honours an individual can receive in his industry. Hi, Joe.
Hi, how you doing? You all right?
Your praises. International Bartender of the Year in the Tales of the Cocktail Spirited Awards. Then he was named the equally prestigious title, the Bartender's Bartender at the world's 50 Best Bars 2018. That was a good year. The first person ever to have won both awards. So Joe and his brother Daniel, also an awarded bartender, co-wrote this book, Schofield's Fine and Classic Cocktails. There it is, shining in the lights, published by Kyle Books. Joe is the bartender and owner of his own chain of bars, self-titled Schofield, co-creator of Sensorium Consultancy and creative director of Astley Brothers, where he recently launched his own dry vermouth. Phew, wonderful. What about that? Welcome, Joe. I'm delighted that you've got us some cocktails to demonstrate and that people can make along with you tonight. We're delighted to have you. Would you like to introduce quickly the 3 cocktails that you're going to be showcasing before we start making them? What are your 3 tonight?
So absolutely. I always get asked quite a lot, what is the best way to be able to like invent or make your own cocktails? And for me, what's absolutely crucial is to understand and really appreciate classic cocktails. Once you have that knowledge, it's so easy for you to be able to interchange ingredients and really start coming up with your own. So the 3 drinks that I picked out tonight are 3 of my favorites to drink around Christmas. We have the French 75, which we'll be making first, which is gin, lemon, a bit of sugar syrup and champagne. It's not, I'd say, as Christmassy as the rest of them, but it's the drink that my grandma always insists that I make around the Christmas dinner table.
And you better do it, yeah.
I know, maybe not this year, but hopefully next year. And then the drink I'm going to be making after that is a very simple twist on a Manhattan. It's called a Harvard, which is brandy, sweet vermouth, Angostura Bitters. And last but not least, we have a really sort of seasonal guilty pleasure of mine, which is the eggnog.
Eggnog is Christmassy, isn't it?
That's it. And all of these drinks have spirit base, which can be interchanged, and depending on what you have in your cupboard. You don't necessarily have to go out to the supermarket and buy a whole sort of cupboard or pantry full of ingredients to be able to make great cocktails.
I think that's what's lovely. Looking through your book, you do suggest, if you don't have this, you could try this, or if you prefer that garnish or this spirit base, then try that. So we'll get a lot of those things going through the conversation, I think, so people can understand that your cocktails are very versatile.
Absolutely. And I think the thing about cocktails is that they're actually very personal to people. People have certain likes, certain dislikes, and the brands and the products that I've chosen tonight are very special to me. The products that I really love and enjoy. But if you don't happen to have the products that I'm using tonight, there's plenty of variables that you can choose from.
Brilliant, because I think a lot of people have a favourite spirit now. I think more than ever, People are into spirits and they know the brand they like and the type they like, and if they can adapt to suit, that's all to the better. Well, shall we get going then? Shall we have French 75 first?
That's right. So for the French 75, and guys, please let me know if I'm going a little bit fast for you. You can always slow it down. It's quite easy for me to get carried away when I'm making cocktails. So with French 75, first things first, grab your cocktail shaker. There's two different types of shakers that are very common. I'm using a 3-piece shaker. You can sometimes use a 2-piece shaker or a Boston shaker, as it's called. I generally prefer a 3-piece. So going in the French 75, we're going to start off with your gin. Going to do 30 ml. One of my favorite gins is Cotswolds gin. As you can guess, it's from the Cotswolds. It's one of that sort of new wave style of gins that have a few interesting flavors going through it. And as I mentioned before, that you can interchange some of the ingredients. You can actually make a great French 75 with a brandy or a cognac base as well, which is also in one of the other drinks we're going to be making. So then we're going to grab 15 ml of lemon juice, freshly squeezed. Fresher the better when it comes to this sort of thing. And if you don't have a measure or what we call a jigger, it's very easy if you just use an espresso cup and work from parts. So after we've added the lemon juice, we're going to add in our sugar syrup. This is a 2-to-1 sugar syrup. Very easy to make at home. You can buy it in a lot of supermarkets as well. It might be under the title gum syrup or sugar syrup, but you can make it easy enough. You just dilute 2 parts of caster sugar with 1 part of hot water. Give it a stir until all the sugar is nice and dissolved. And then into the shaker, we're going to add 10 ml. So I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of tips that I've picked up over the last 15 years in the industry. And the first one is make sure you've always got frozen glassware. So I keep my glassware in the freezer and I pull it out just before I start shaking. And the other one is always make sure you've got your garnishes cut before we start to prepare the drink, just so you don't lose time once the drink's been finished and brought to the right temperature and mixed correctly after you've shaken it or stirred it or however you're preparing your cocktail. So what you want to do, you want to grab a Swiss peeler or a Y peeler, something like this, and then just run it along the side of a lemon to get a nice long lemon peel. I'm going to come up to the camera closely now. You don't actually be taking any of the flesh from the lemon. Just want to make sure that you've got a nice little bit of white pith on one side and then a nice long shape of lemon on the other.
Joe, can I ask you a question?
Into the freezer.
Someone's asking, Georgette's asking, could you use sweetener instead?
Yeah, for me, I personally prefer sugar syrup in the majority of cocktails, but if you don't have any sugar syrup at hand, you can just add some, I'd say roughly 2 teaspoons of caster sugar. If failing that, some honey would work nicely. Sweeteners, I find have a very sort of distinct flavor profile, which when used in cocktails can sometimes overpower the rest of the ingredients. One of the things I love about this drink is that it's so delicate, so nuanced. If you start adding in some other sweeteners in there, like artificial sweeteners, it can really throw off the balance of the cocktail. But honey,
that sounds
in this
really
drink
nice,
would be a great
especially this time of year. What's the best way to make sugar syrup? Helen's asking.
What you do is put the kettle on, and then I always do it by weight. So I'll get my scales, measure out 100 grams of caster sugar, and then I'll measure out 50 grams of hot water from the kettle, pour it into an appropriate jug or vessel that's heat proof, and then just stir it through until all the sugar syrup's dissolved. That's it. So a lot of people like to serve a French 75 in a champagne flute. It's perfectly acceptable. I actually prefer to serve mine in a nice frozen coupette. And then what we're going to do now, we're going to give it a quick shake. And one of the main ingredients for a cocktail, and arguably the most important ingredients that I find, is actually the quality of ice. If you're using ice that you can buy in a supermarket, you can actually really sort of water down and dilute your cocktail. The more ice, the better is a rule of thumb. But what I actually do is I take some plastic Tupperwares, fill it to about 80% full of water, and then just leave them in the freezer. And then when it comes out, you get these beautiful big chunks of ice, and it really helps to improve the quality of your drink.
Is that the principle of that?
So
Is that they're very big pieces so they don't melt too quickly?
Exactly, yeah. Like the bigger the better. So there's less surface area in contact with the liquid, and you almost want to fold the shaker as much as you can. And what that does, the main reason you do it is just to really control that dilution process. Remember, we're going to be topping this drink up with champagne, which is going to stretch some of the flavors from the lemon and the gin. We really want to try and control that and have as little dilution as possible with maximum cooling and
but not lots of water.
Maximum cooling.
Nasty.
That's it, yeah.
Well done. Okay, someone's saying, James is saying, my number one ingredient is alcohol. Yeah, well, we probably agree with you there, especially this time of year. Someone else though asking, could you use seedlip, a non-alcoholic spirit instead for people who don't want to have alcohol?
Absolutely, yeah. If you're going to use seedlip for this drink, obviously I wouldn't recommend topping it up with champagne or prosecco or sparkling wine, whatever you have. Maybe you could top it up with a nice, interesting soda. Perhaps like a grapefruit soda would be nice with those flavors of the seedlip and the lemon and the sugar.
There's a great new non-alcoholic spirit from Salcombe Gin called NLL, which I really, really like. Anyway, carry on.
So without further ado, we're going to give this a quick shake. When you'll shake hard enough, and you don't want to be shaking too long. For this style of drink, I like to shake for only about 5 seconds, again, to really control that dilution. So not too long there. And what we're going to do now is going to take a fine strainer. Don't worry if you don't have one of these. Personally, and again, I just like to take out those small shards of ice. Again, it just helps you control the dilution of the drink. And then I'm going to take the sparkling wine that you have. I'm using Charles Heidsieck's, one of my favourite champagnes. And then I'm just going to give that a nice little top up. So obviously we don't want want to make sure that that liquid is nice and mixed in. Just going to take like a small spoon or a cocktail stirrer, very gentle stir. We don't want to pop any of the bubbles. We want to make sure the champagne has that beautiful effervescence, that beautiful bead. And then we're going to take our garnish. And then a lot of people, when you see them using these twists or using citrus peel as a garnish in the drinks, can get a little bit carried away sometimes. For me, just nice little squirts. It's like a little squeeze over the top of your drink, like that. And then just waft it over. And then just drop it in. That's it. All you really want to do is release those oils over the drink. It's estimated that about 90% of flavour comes from aroma, and we want to make sure that it's got a beautiful aroma, beautiful scent.
And that's quite a wide piece of zest, isn't it, you're using, not a little stingy thing. So you should get some good aroma off that.
That's it. Yeah, I'm going to show you a different style of zest in the next drink, but for me, this is how a French 75 should be drunk.
Beautiful. That's a very elegant drink, isn't it? A kind of aperitif style.
Absolutely. I see why my grandma likes it so much.
Well done. Lovely.
Thank you.
Quite a refreshing, mouth-watering style of cocktail, would you say?
Absolutely, yeah. For me, this is the perfect drink to serve before Christmas lunch or Christmas dinner, whatever you have. It's an aperitif, in my opinion, opens up the palate and gets you ready for your turkey roast.
It won't clutter up your mouth, it's more refreshing. Other spirits you could use instead. Someone's asking, could tequila be used instead? And also, I think you've perhaps said that you could use it with cognac instead?
Absolutely, yeah. So for this drink, it's great with vodka, tequila, even mezcal I've tried it with before. Cognac makes a delicious one. It really is a very versatile drink.
So if you're not a gin lover, and I think lots of our Telegraph readers are, because I host the Telegraph Gin Experience, and that's a very popular event. But if you're not a gin lover, then simply put in a different spirit. I'm an Armagnac lover. I wonder if that.
Oh, very nice.
Perhaps, but I love my gin too. Brilliant. What have we got here coming up? No, I don't think we've got any questions at the moment. There's certainly going to be a link to the list of ingredients and the methods that if you haven't had already, you will get at the end of this. So don't worry too much about that at the moment. I'll hand back to you, Joe, I think. Let you get on with the next one.
Sure, sounds good. So the next drink we're going to make is a twist on the Manhattan. The Manhattan is one of arguably one of the oldest cocktails that are most popular. If you start looking back into cocktail history, it can get quite geeky. It can go back to sort of punches being considered the first cocktail. But for me, Manhattan is referenced around the time that the word cocktail actually came into use, which is the early 1800s. And for me, this is a variation that I really love. It's called a Harvard. So there's plenty of variations on a lot of classic cocktails that are classic cocktails in their own right. And the Harvard being one of those. A very simple twist on the Manhattan. So we're going to be using a mixing tin or a mixing glass for this cocktail. And again, don't worry too much if you don't have this piece of equipment at home. There's plenty of other substitutes. Just a normal sort of a jug can do, or even sometimes just a normal glass. But what's very crucial here is to make sure that you're very accurate with your measurements, because even if you're off just a little bit, it can really throw the cocktail out of balance and out of proportion, basically. So we're going to start off with 3 dashes of Angostura Bitters. You can also get, again, quite geeky, like I like to get when I'm working in a bar, is by using a chef spoon to really get as accurate as I can, which is about 2.5 ml is my perfect amount of bitters for a Manhattan or a Harvard. But about 3 dashes is roughly the same. So 1, 2, 3. Next up, we're going to use our red vermouth. This is Astley Bross Estate Vermouth. It's part of our portfolio from Astley Bross. It's made using 100% English-grown grapes from Gusbourne Estate, and this is completely made with the Pinot Noir grape varietal. It's blended and bottled right in the heart of London. So we're going to add in 25 ml.
So Joe, that's a vermouth. So have herbs been added to it? How do you make the vermouth from the Gusbourne English grapes?
That's it. So we add certain blend of botanicals, got quite a bit in there. And I guess the easiest way to explain what vermouth is for people that might not necessarily be familiar with the term, as it is still a relatively niche product in the cocktail world, I would say it's a combination of wine and the botanicals that you find in gin and put together. And that is the simplest way I can explain what vermouth is.
Yeah, kind of herbal, slightly liqueur-like red wine.
Absolutely. So the brandy that I'm using today is Seven Tails brandy. It's an incredible product. And with regards to brandies and Calvados being another one of the ingredients that I'm using today, sometimes they're considered a little bit old-fashioned, perhaps. But what I love about this and the Calvados, which we'll talk about later, is how sort of modern and unique and relatively disruptive this product is. And this isn't technically a cognac or an Armagnac, but I believe inside the bottle and the liquid, there is a blend of different brandies, different cognacs and Armagnacs. For it to be called a cognac, it has to come from the cognac region. And just as the same, the champagne has to come from the Champagne region, so there's cognac from a cognac, but this does contain cognac as well as some other grapes.
So it's labelled as a brandy, is it? So it's a generic brandy, but it's got lots of cognac in it. Someone asking, would white vermouth work instead of red if you happen to have that in?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you'll still be able to make a delicious drink. If you look at the sort of formulas of these recipes, it should be relatively easy to interchange ingredients. So if you do perhaps have a dry vermouth, maybe you could substitute that for the red vermouth, the estate vermouth. Again, if you don't happen to have a brandy or a cognac at hand, if you've got a nice bottle of scotch, you can make a Rob Roy. There's a handful of variations of all these drinks.
How much brandy did you put in, Christine's asking?
50 ml. Thank you for reminding me, Christine.
Okay, carry on.
So now we've got all the ingredients in. Again, same as last time. Want to make sure that we've got our garnish cut. Again, we don't want to let the cocktail rise in temperature while we're preparing our orange coin. Again, this is a drink that if you don't happen to have an orange at hand, maybe you've got a lemon, maybe you've got some cherries. It's a great drink that has an interchangeable garnish. For this style of drink, I prefer a nice little beautiful coin shape. Again, I'm going to come round to the camera. You want to make sure that you've not got any of the flesh on the coin.
Nice.
It's just got the nice white piece.
Yeah.
And a nice bit of orange on it as well. So I'm just going to go and pull out my last glass from the
You use
freezer.
some tangerine, that's the thing in cocktails.
Yeah,
the seasonal fruit.
absolutely. A nice clementine tart for Christmas.
Yeah.
Again, a bit of tradition in our household is getting an orange as a Christmas present, a very old school tradition. Again, I think that aroma and that blend, now I'm old enough to drink, certainly brings a lot of Christmas memories.
Yeah, no, we still do the orange in the stocking. Is Martini Rosso a vermouth, asks Joyce. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer.
It is a vermouth, yes.
One of the bigger brands of vermouth.
So you'll be able to find that in a lot of supermarkets. So next up, again, we're icing up. You want to try and get as much ice as possible in there. And for this drink, you want to stir it with a spoon or perhaps even a chopstick or anything sort of long and metal. It's really good for you to be able to stir this drink down. I'm trying in for about 20 seconds to get the appropriate dilution. With this drink, we're not serving it on any ice like the last one. So we want to make sure that the dilution is as good as it can be to be able to get the best flavour profile across in the cocktail.
So, just to be really clear on this, because I think people really want to know, a Rosso, Martini Rosso, a red vermouth, is that a sweet vermouth, or are there dry red vermouths and sweet red vermouths?
I guess the best way to describe it is that the majority of red vermouths or Rosso vermouths, or however they're branded on the market, would tend to be the sweet vermouth. It all comes down to, again, we can get quite geeky about it, but it all comes down to sort of EU classification about sugar content. As there are some red vermouths on the market that aren't technically sweet vermouths, but I'd say 95% of the time they would be leaning towards the sweet. I mean,
that is my experience too, that if you're buying a red vermouth, it is a sweet red vermouth almost always.
That's it. So now we're going to put a strainer in the top of the vessel that you're going to be using to stir this drink, and you want to pour it nice and smooth. This is a rich, indulgent drink. We want to make sure that we're not putting any bubbles in the drink. We want it to feel very smooth, very silky. And again, just like before with the little coin, we're just going to spritz it over the top, squeezing it, trying to get as much oil out as possible, and then letting it float on the top of the drink. The reason you see a lot of people with a citrus peel rubbing it around the rim is that it does in fact bring out a little bit more oil. But the issue that you have with that is that the citrus oils can sometimes stay on your lips. And if you're going from something like this drink with a lot of orange in it, and which ends up on your lips afterwards, and if you go to a different drink, there'll still always be that hint of orange. So I prefer a nice, delicate.
I love those glasses, beautiful. Cupette glasses, yeah.
That's it. So there we have the Harvard. The Harvard's a great drink for after dinner. Really beautiful digestive. So we've done the aperitif with the French 75. We've done the digestive with the Harvard, and the next drink we're going to show you is a very, very guilty pleasure of mine, which is the Eggnog.
Well, just before you make that one, a couple more questions for you. Emma's asking, where would you recommend purchasing cocktail making gadgets? So you know, your cocktail making kit.
There's a really great website called Cocktail Kingdom. You can find a lot on there, a lot of tools that professionals use, and they even sell glassware and they ship all over the world.
Say that again, just so we all caught it.
Cocktail Kingdom, www.cocktailkingdom.com.
There's some Christmas presents to be bought there, I suspect.
That's it.
Wonderful. So you think that's a digestive? So you would have that at the end of a meal? It wouldn't go necessarily with food?
No, I think there is a bit of a trend for having a food pairing with cocktails, and I think unless you are creating a cocktail specifically to almost act as another ingredient for that dish, it can be quite hard to pair them together. I think you've already got quite a lot going on in these cocktails. I prefer to drink them as an aperitif or as a digestive.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and maybe have some wine with the food, which in my view is still the most versatile drink to go with food. But I know beer lovers will disagree with that. So we've got we've had two now, and lovely Cupette glasses. I really might get some of those. Do you want to get cracking? See what I did there? Your eggnog.
That's it. So this drink's going to take a little bit more time. We have to whisk the egg whites quite a little bit, but this drink, it is very, very naughty. Just a little bit of a word of warning for you. There is quite a bit of sugar in there. It's full of cream. It's amazing. For me, I can drink this as a dessert instead of having a slice of Yule log. And this drink has such rich heritage in the UK. Actually, it's actually a twist on an old medieval drink called the posset, which was essentially a warmed glass of milk or cream filled with spices. So it really is.
It's a classic.
From our own
No, I'm
culture.
just turning to the page about it in your book, and there's a beautiful photo. But yes, you say eggnog derives from a medieval British drink called a posset, which was a hot milk-based beverage flavoured with spices. Was it alcoholic back in those days?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest. It's a good question.
Good alcohol, I would imagine. And then you say there are many different ways to serve it. Yes, there are indeed a lot of different recipes. How do you come up with your own personal take on something that is this, I don't want to say vague, but there are lots of different versions of it. How do you find the Joe Schofield take on it?
It's a great question. Again, it really relates to, well, I guess the best way to answer that is that any drink that I've ever made, whether, I'm serving it in the 5-star hotels I've worked at in London or in the Far East in Singapore where I was working, I've always started with a classic cocktail as the base, and from there I've always worked and created a new drink. So I think once you have that understanding of the classic cocktails, it's so easy for you to be able to create and recreate your own drinks, your own innovations. And for me, I'll always try and utilize some ingredients from the local region or locavore that I'm working in, again, so our guests can have an emotional connection to those drinks. And for me, the key to a great cocktail is all in simplicity. Substituting perhaps the syrup that's going into a French 75 with creating your own syrup. Perhaps it's like an orange blossom syrup going in there, an orange peel sherbet going in there, changing the spirit base, changing the garnish, until ultimately you've come up with a drink.
So is it like when we cook food and a lot of us tinker with recipes, might make something out of, I don't know, Diana Henry book and then play around and customize it to ourselves. Is that okay with cocktails? Are we free to do that as much?
Yeah, absolutely. There's somebody described it to me once in a very similar sort of fashion. He said that chefs in the kitchen have the 6 mother sauces and bartenders have the 6 mother cocktails. So there's a handful of these drinks that you can really trace almost every cocktail back to. And the Manhattan being one of those, the fizz being another, the daiquiri being another. It's very easy for you to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Great. A couple of questions and then I'll let you get on, I promise. Where are the glasses from, please, Christina?
These ones, or those ones. The Coupé glasses are actually from Cocktail Kingdom, coincidentally.
And there's going to be some questions about the egg used in this, but I think I'll let you get going, and then people asking questions, we will come back and ask those questions. So Joe, I'll hand over to you, and then we'll have some more questions as you cook the eggnog.
Sure, no worries. So first things first, I'm going to give you guys a bit of time to separate your egg yolk to your egg white. I've already done it just so I don't have to do this on camera. I'll give you a few moments for that. And then just to try and address some of those questions, perhaps about the use of eggs in drinks, because it will technically be raw. If there are substitutions, if you're not comfortable with it, aquafaba, which is a chickpea ingredient, chickpea made ingredient, you can substitute for egg white. But the reality is all of the eggs that we get in this country, are almost guaranteed to be safe. And people have been putting raw eggs in cocktails for about 150 years now. So I've never seen any issues with it in the 15 years that I've been working in the industry. A lot of people that are working in the venues that are serving these drinks have exceptional standards and making sure that all the products and ingredients that they use are as fresh as they can.
You can use aquafaba instead of egg white.
That's right. And if you want to omit the egg yolk, you still can do. Obviously, you lose a bit of that richness. I'd probably recommend that you add another 30 ml or 1 fluid ounce of cream to be able to get that richness back.
So you're adding 2 elements there to make up for the egg.
That's right. So I've got my little scale in front of me, and we've got our egg yolk separated into a Pyrex. I'm going to add in 50 grams of caster sugar.
Oh, this is going to be rich, but you know, it is Christmas.
This is absolutely, and you have to whisk it, so you are going to burn off some.
And you're not going to have this again till Easter.
That's it. So there we go. We've got our egg yolk and caster sugar together. We're going to come back to this this jug in a second. And what we're going to do, we just want to make sure that we're getting all of that egg yolk emulsified with the caster sugar until it's a nice, beautiful, sort of pale yellow. Just really want to make sure that we're picking up all of that sugar from the sides.
That was just one egg, was it, Joe?
That was just one egg, yeah. One egg yolk. And then in a mixing bowl, we have one egg white. And this is where you have to put the work in and really give it a good whisk.
Thank you to Alan. Thank you to Alan's wife, who says excellent. I think we're going to get some
very
eggs.
good.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, if anybody's got any more egg-related jokes, I'm all ears. So in an ideal world, you're going to have enough time to be able to form this into stiff peaks. If you do have a kitchen processor, obviously that'll make your life a bit easier. You want to keep going. The key to this bit is you want to make sure that it has those beautiful folds. Because what we're going to do, we're going to fold it through the rest of the ingredients later, and it gives it a stunning texture on the palate.
Lovely. So it's 50 grams of sugar for those that didn't catch that. 50 grams of sugar was used.
That's 50 grams with one egg yolk in a different vessel.
And presumably, you know, high quality eggs, really good free-range eggs with lots of lovely yellow yolk.
Absolutely. So once we've given that a nice whisk, we're going to set that to one side, and then we go back to our egg yolk and sugar mix. And inside this, we're going to add in 60 ml of double cream.
Oh, goodness. Oh, this is
I know, it is naughty. 120 ml of whole milk. I prefer whole milk. When I am being indulgent, I don't like to hold back. And stir all that through together. Just make sure all the ingredients are mixed in.
Now, I think some people, including me, get a bit nervous about eggs. You know, could it curdle? Could something separate? Is there anything that could go wrong here?
To be honest, I've never had any issues with it. I think one of the biggest issues you do have when you're using raw eggs is when you're combining citrus or anything with acid in it, as that the acid in your citrus or whatever will really start to cook the proteins in the egg white. If you're using ingredients that don't really have any acidity in them at all, such as we're using today, you won't have any issues with texture.
Pam is saying, isn't this like a bit like Zabaglione? Italian
it's a bit like
dessert.
what, sorry?
I say Zabaglione, but Zabaglione. No?
To be honest, I'm not sure what that is.
But it's a bit, it's stiffer. You know, it's not as rummy as this drink, I would say. But the jokes are yes, the jokes are becoming
the jokes rolling in.
Thank you, Emma. Or excessive. Oh dear. Carry on.
So what we're using now is Calvados. Again, I'd say dark spirits for this drink will make a great eggnog. If you don't have any of this on hand, you can use the Seven Tails cognac the Seven Tails brandy, sorry, or any other cognac or Armagnac. A really nice sort of aged rum. Always works wonderfully in an eggnog. But for me, yeah, it's lovely. But for me, I love Calvados. And again, this is a little bit of a more sort of modern interpretation of Calvados called a Valen. And the guys that produce this, they just create an amazing liquid for one, but they're also very conscious of the environment. So the whole product is made with an ambition to be able to help the bee community. They have a percentage of sales of profits going to help the bee community. The packaging is actually made from pressed apples. It's a stunning product. And just like before, you can either grab your espresso cup or your jigger, and you want to add in 45 ml.
ml. Okay. And Calvados is a wonderful drink. I love apple brandy, and that one sounds fantastic. I also, can I just put a word in for the Somerset Cider Company's apple brandy that is made in Somerset, if you want to buy one that's made in this country.
So once we've got to this stage, we want to combine our egg whites and the rest of our mixture. So we're just going to gently add this in, and then just gently fold it through. Again, just making sure all those ingredients are nice and emulsified. So even though we have technically made one portion, I think there's enough in here for 2 people. So you don't have to feel too guilty about all of that sugar going in it. And then back in the freezer for a nice little rocks glass or whatever you guys have at hand. Do you freeze
all your glasses?
I would always recommend it for anything cold or any cocktail, unless it's a hot drink, obviously, like an Irish coffee or a hot toddy. For me, it should always be in a frozen glass. It's even it's like going into a restaurant and the chef not serving a plate of food, a hot dish on a hot plate. For me, it should be the same with drinks. Cold drinks should go in frozen glassware, and it just really helps you have a much tastier drink for the longevity of your drinking that cocktail.
James is saying, do you have room for food in that freezer?
I don't. I'm just a bit of ice in there. I'm just glad to. So just want to top that up. And again, if you don't have any sort of nutmeg at hand, this works great with a little bit of cinnamon. Tonka bean perhaps works wonderfully well with Calvados. You get those beautiful vanilla notes in it. I've gone for a bit of fresh nutmeg today, just over the top of a microplane. You just want to...
Tell us about Tonka beans. You said that's an alternative. Can you explain what that is, please?
It's a bean from South America. It's a very sort of unusual ingredient that's a little bit hard to find in the UK. But it tastes a little bit of like nutmeg, vanilla. It's an incredible ingredient if you can find it. But failing that, obviously, nutmeg, you can find it in most supermarkets. It's a very delicious.
But you would always grind it from fresh, would you? You wouldn't buy pre-ground.
If you can do it fresh, I always think fresh is better. And when it comes to cocktails, I'd always do that, just with a little microplane, just over the top. You don't want big chunks. You don't want to have a huge chunk of nutmeg going into your drink while you're drinking. Again, it can really throw off the balance. Just very gently over the top with a microplane, and then you have an eggnog.
The colour of it.
Cheers.
June is asking, can this be served be served in a punch bowl for people to help themselves, or does it need to be made one at a time? Question from June.
Oh, absolutely. This is a great drink for you to be able to have around the Christmas dinner table. Make a huge bowl of it, and then just at the end of dinner, just before the mince pies come out, just portion it out for everybody.
So that's when you're going to drink this, is it, Joe? It's going to be at the end of dinner?
That's it, yeah. For me, this is my dessert. I love it. It's rich. It's so delicious. Honestly.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'm kind of thinking after a cold walk. Kind of, I know it's not a hot drink, but there's something so comforting about that richness, isn't there?
That's right.
It's all in the texture. Can I ask a question about using sparkling wine and champagne in cocktails? Because I'm a huge fan of champagne cocktails, but I have to say I don't often use champagne. I find that using a Cremant or a very good quality Cava, both of which are dry sparklers, work just as well. And I've written about that quite a lot. Is that sacrilege?
No, not at all. I mean, again, for me, I think there might be some people that would challenge me on this, but, you know, cocktails are so personal. If there's one way that you like to do something, or there's some ingredients that you really like, it's your drink. Make them however you like. That's the beautiful thing about them. They're so versatile. For me personally, I just love champagne in cocktails. I'm a huge champagne fan, but you're absolutely right. A beautiful Cremant or even a Prosecco works so well in cocktails.
Well, Prosecco is slightly sweeter, isn't it? I think of Prosecco as for Bellinis and fruity cocktails in particular. Do you?
Yeah, for me, I always make a Bellini with Prosecco, but I'm a big fan of an Aperol Spritz as well, so I've always got a bottle of Prosecco.
Yeah, who doesn't like an Aperol Spritz? Yeah, great. Joyce is saying, I thought that this eggnog might be like Avocat, which she thinks is disgusting. I'm not a fan either, but it's totally different, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Avocat is, it's quite an interesting product. Obviously, it's quite a little bit more fortified because you've got some fresh ingredients in there and it needs to sit in a bottle for a while. But this really is as fresh as you can get it. Fresh eggs, fresh cream, fresh milk, and the fresh nutmeg on top as well. It really is a much lighter and actually a little, and I guess lower in ABV alternative to Avocat, which is another Christmas staple.
What about hot cocktails, or can we call them hot, or moles? Tell us a bit about what we can do on cold evenings or even afternoons at Christmas if we want to make a hot mixed drink like a cocktail.
For me, you can't really go wrong with a hot toddy.
No.
And this is such an easy drink for you to be able to make at home as well. You want to look at, I'll do it in parts so it's a little bit easier to be able to remember the recipe. Yeah. So you want to have 1 part of honey, 2 parts of lemon, 4 parts of a dark spirit such as Scotch. I really like Scotch in a hot toddy. And then 8 parts of hot water from the kettle. And then again over the top, I really like a nice lemon peel. But nutmeg's great in there, a cinnamon stick, and that's a great Christmas cocktail as well.
And I'd say go easy on the cloves actually in a hot toddy. Also in mulled wine, I think people use a lot of cloves too much sometimes because cloves gives a very strong flavour, doesn't it?
That's it. For such a small ingredient, they really do pack a punch, and it's those ingredients are actually that small that have so much flavour in them that you really need to be very careful when you're using them.
My tip with mulled wine is to add them, add all those ingredients bit by bit and keep tasting. If you bung it all in at once and something's too sweet or too strong, it's a bit hard to come back from that. Lynn is saying, is that lemon juice in the hot toddy?
Lemon juice, yeah.
And is there a dairy-free alternative to eggnog? I think that came up before when you talked about a different ingredient.
Yeah, well, I mean, instead of using milk and cream, there's a lot of amazing milk alternatives on the market right now. Oat milk would be a great variation. Again, you would lose a bit of that richness that the cream brings and a bit of that flavour that the cream brings. But there's so many milk variations that, whatever you used to drinking, you've got in the fridge. Almond milk would be great. Oat milk will be great. Just you can use those. And
I don't know if are you happy to talk about mulled wine? It's not a cocktail as such, but do you like mulled wine?
I do every now and again. Like Manchester, where I live. I'm just from on the outskirts originally. I did see somebody's from Ramsbottom, and that is literally a mile down the road from where I'm from. And then, like Manchester, we have amazing Christmas markets every year, and that's the one time of the year where I will go and have a mulled wine.
So yeah, I think a lot of us turn our thoughts to mulled wine. I'd say make it from scratch. A lot of the ones you buy in.
That's it. Yeah, you've got to be careful with it. For me, like the mulled wine is almost a cocktail version of a stew. Yeah. Just always want to add little bit by little bit. And as you're saying, Susie, just make sure you're tasting because a few ingredients can really throw off the balance.
And add all the ingredients. So don't boil it. All that alcohol steams off into the night. You just want to bring it just under a simmer. If you boil it to a rolling boil, certainly won't have any effects from the alcohol. Any other really Christmassy cocktails that you feel you'd like to touch on? Rob?
Oh, well, I guess one of the obvious ones is a mimosa. A lot of people drink them in the morning, or a Bucks Fizz. Again, for me, I wanted to stay away from that. I think it's a very sort of traditional drink that we have in the UK. I think sometimes, when people are grabbing orange juice and champagne, whatever time they're drinking it, it can have a bit of an unusual taste to the palate. I mean, if you are making that at home, try using a very good orange liqueur instead of the fresh orange juice, and make it a little bit more like a Key Royale style. tiny, maybe 2 tablespoons of, 2 teaspoons. 2 tablespoons might be a bit much. 2 teaspoons of a really good orange liqueur or curacao, and then topped up with champagne. Again, nice bit of orange over the top.
What's your favourite orange liqueur then?
I really like Pierre Ferrand.
Say again?
Pierre Ferrand orange curacao.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really great product. Loads of flavour. Tastes really fresh. It's delicious.
Sylvia's asking, what would you put in a Long Island iced tea? From what I remember, it's pretty much everything.
Pretty much, yeah. Long Island iced tea, vodka, gin, rum, tequila, orange liqueur, which you just touched on, lemon juice. It doesn't need any sugar syrup for me. Tiny bit of Coca-Cola. A lot of places always put too much Coca-Cola in. It is one of those disco drinks that, that maybe should have remained in the 80s, but I still quite enjoy one as a guilty pleasure. You just want to put enough Coca-Cola in there so it actually has the same colour as an iced tea. You don't want too much.
Some of us drank a lot of that in the 80s, I can tell you. Anyway, where do you buy your specialist spirits and liqueurs from, and how long do liqueurs last? 2 separate questions there.
Sure. So one of the best resources would be the Whiskey Exchange online. You can pretty much get next day delivery for a lot of their items. They've got an infinite number of products on there, some that are new, and they've also got a lot of rare and vintage products on there as well. And sorry, remind me what that second follow-up was. Oh, how long they last? Sorry, that was
after they're opened, I think is meant.
To be honest, it depends on the product. So obviously things with a higher alcohol by volume content will last a little bit longer. Vermouth and sherry, any fortified wine should always be kept in the fridge. Liqueurs tend to have a lot of sugar in them, so they can last a while as well. But you always need to be conscious of that. Once you've opened them, you have induced more air into that bottle, so they will start to oxidize slowly. I think any sort of spirit bottles like gin, rum, whiskey that have been opened, you should really try and consume them within 18 months to get them the best and the freshest. And anything that has a lower ABV is like a wine base, such as vermouth. If it's in the fridge, you can probably keep it for 3 months. But you really want to try and drink it as fast as possible within reason, I guess, and make sure that you are using that stock. So you still get the best flavour.
The old bottle that comes out every Christmas for 5 years, do we? Chuck it and start again.
That's it.
Interesting.
That's it. Share it with your family, share it with your friends. That's what
if in doubt and there's a little bit left, chuck it and start again. Interesting question. Raspberry liqueurs. Good cocktails using raspberry liqueur. Now, Chambord is the most famous raspberry liqueur, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's a black raspberry liqueur, Chambord. Famous cocktails using raspberry liqueur. Again, one of my favourite drinks in the world is a drink called a Clover Club. This is a stunning drink. I always love making it whenever a guest orders it. It's a gin, dry vermouth, lemon, sugar, egg white again, which we saw today, and fresh raspberries. I just think if you want to make a raspberry cocktail, you really can't go wrong with that drink.
Yeah, I love raspberry flavour. We'll have to wind up soon, but Nick Oliver's asking, we've got a bottle of triple sec that sat on the drink shelf for ages. What would you recommend we make with it?
With triple sec? Let me think. I tell you what, if you want to fancy yourself having something like a Bucks Fizz or a Mimosa, and you have some triple sec for Christmas Day, that'll make a great version of that.
So you're
kind of just a tiny little bit of it, 10 ml, 2 teaspoons.
I like that. That sounds because Bucks Fizz can be a little bit mundane, can't it?
Sometimes I think you start to lose all those beautiful nuanced flavors in the champagne or the sparkling wine that you're using. They really become overpowered with the fresh orange juice. So if you are just using a tiny bit of these orange liqueurs into your Bucks Fizz, you can create a really delicious
I love that tip. That's happening in my house. I'm going to be putting triple sec or orange liqueur into my Bucks.
That's it. Minimal effort as well.
And I shall blame you when it all goes horribly wrong. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Joe. You've been marvellous. And thank you so much to everyone who's joined us. So from everyone at the Telegraph, we'd like to thank you very much for tuning in to the Christmas Made Easy series. I hope we've successfully got you into the Christmassy spirit. and given you some lovely new ideas, and I hope made your festive planning a little bit easier. So from me and from all the team and from Joe, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Christmas. Cheers to you all. Cheers. Thank you, Joe.
Cheers, guys. Happy Christmas.